record. All right, welcome to episode number 5 of Tea Kada Bench. This episode is a special format, a new format that Adi and I are exploring, an exclusively audio format where there is no Instagram live and no audience interaction. And perhaps most importantly, the episodes are short, small, digestible 20 to 30-minute bits. This was another suggestion from you all, so hope you all like it. And again, as usual, do your thing. Tell us, give us your feedback, and we will improve this as we go on. And Adi, do you want to introduce? What do you want to talk about?
So we're planning on doing like a short series on stories and just storytelling, like how your grandmother used to do, your mother used to do, your father used to do. So today's story is going to be on this huge king called Vel Pari, who is a Sangam king. He is known as one of the 7 great kings of Tamil literature. In Tamil, it's called Kadai Ballal. So this story is about the environment and how humanity should be intertwined with the environment, and we shouldn't be separate or opposed to the environment. Our growth shouldn't be on the destruction of environment. That's what the story is about.
Nice. So, Adi, do you want to start the story? Okay, guys, we'll first tell you the story and then we'll just talk about the story. It's very simple. We haven't thought about it much. I haven't heard this story before. Adi's just going to tell me as I'm going to listen to the first time, and we're just going to talk about the story after he finishes reciting it. It's a pretty simple thing. So, welcome to the fifth episode of Tea Kada Bench and first episode of Tea Kada Bench Shorts. Adi?
Yeah. So in the about 3rd century CE, there was this king called Pari, and when he once was going down his chariot in the forest, he was feeling really thirsty, and he stopped his chariot next to this plant, and he went to go fetch himself a cup of water. When he's fetching himself a handful of water, he was mesmerized by the rivers and the animals that were walking and flowing around it, that he took a minute. He stayed there until sunset, and at the brink of sunset, he went back to his chariot to go back to his palace. And right before he moved his chariot, he realized that a jasmine vine had just twined around his chariot's wheel. And he realized that moving his chariot would mean that it would not only kill that vine, it would take away the only source of support that vine had. So the vine had no other support nearby. So it probably died in the near future. So what Pari did, he left his golden chariot there.
Okay.
So he left his golden chariot there for the vine to just to twine around and grow in the presence of his golden chariot. And this is known as the king who gave his chariot to this Mullai plant. Mullai ki per kodutha Pari in Tamil. So after this, what happened was he completely renounced his throne, and he completely went into philanthropy and saving the environment. He started raising awareness about the environment and telling people about how we should live with the environment rather than live with the destruction of the environment. And fun fact, he had 2 daughters. The daughters' names were Angavai and Sangavai. Reference in Shivaji.
This is the best part about the story.
Yeah.
Mass. Okay. So
yeah, I like this story because like at that time when nature was still like such an important part, we had such a huge forest cover and everything. People even then were like, we still need to conserve the environment, even though the nature and forests were so large. Even then, the slight deforestation made people write about, and people do like philanthropy about the environment. Even then, this was
relevant.
3rd century. Yeah,
and very relevant because I think so much of the world, right? It's just like they're not aware of deforestation and its effects, right? Like I use, so like sometimes we have monkeys and pigeons come to our building, okay, and then like yesterday, and like because we keep food on our balcony, and so yesterday we kind of we have two vessels for water, right? So one of the vessels we were cleaning, so we only put water in one of the vessels, and so one of the pigeons came, and then it just stood there, and it didn't drink the water and flew off. And my mom was like, பாரு நம்ம டெய்லி தண்ணி ஊத்துறோம், ஆனா குடிக்கவே, ஆனா இன்னைக்கு இந்த இதுல ஊத்துனால குடிக்கவே மாட்டேங்குது. Okay, she was just complaining that, how we didn't drink water. Uh, and no, but like the thing is, this was its home. We just cut down a bunch of trees and erected a huge building and set up camp, right? And like, not that like she meant it in a very casual way, but to think about that, right? Like, yeah, it's like for us to think that we are serving it water is a little arrogant, and I think little little almost, like this, it's something disheartening, because this used to be its home. We were like, what, we'll just deforest this, erect a few concrete buildings, and in our nice clay pots that we bought in Kalakshetra, we will put water and you can come drink water. So that's a very, and for us to feel good about that also, right, is as if
Yeah.
we've done something very, very, very noble. Is very
Like, sadly, I think, especially now, this story, like Puri and I were planning on doing this story about a week ago, and I think this story has had more impact today than ever before, with the sad news that comes out of Kerala about the mother elephant and the baby who
yeah
succumbed to a firecracker which was filled within a pineapple. So recent developments in the news have shown that it wasn't meant for the elephant. It was meant for wild boars, which used to come and ransack the farms. But even then, right, some people are justifying it, saying it wasn't meant for the elephant, but it was still meant for another life form. It was still meant to cause harm and distress and death, and like a painful death to another being that we're supposed to share the planet with, not like live off their suffering.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think
I'm not saying like completely like be one with nature, go back and live in the forest and don't build concrete and not like that, but like as much as we can, we should like be in a symbiotic relationship with the nature around us. We weren't killing the wild boars for food. We were not doing it for our own sustenance like another animal. We were doing it for safeguarding our property, which means nothing to anything. Property and your money means nothing to you.
That is that is literally a figment of your imagination, right? That's just that we have all agreed to. If we all believe in it, it's basically another religion, right? We all come together and said, okay, we are going to abide by this thing called contracts, and in this contract it says I own this land, and hence you sort of posing authority over it, thinking you have full authority over it is stupid. And I think another reason, right, this whole symbiotic thing, you do it for like, again, like don't we don't even need to pretend like mankind has reached a point where we can, think beyond us. Even from a purely selfish point, where if it's even our species' survival, it makes a lot of sense to live with nature, right? Like even a cynical take like that, right? You have to have the ecosystem working for you to get your fruits, right? You need to make sure there's efficient farming that uses less water, just so there's water left for other things and to keep the soil fertile, right? So it's a whole, and that's another thing with the whole ecosystem, right? It's such a fragile thing that we don't understand actually, right? We may think pushing one variable out for sake of convenience is all right, but that always causes a chain reaction of other repercussions. And yeah, and again, I think the most important thing about this story is that it's a really old story, right? And the fact that like that society understood, maybe not even to this great detail of what the implications of saving the environment is, but it's important. Like if it's not saved, something will happen, right? They're speaking with some experience, right? They might have built a lot of
Yeah.
palaces at one point, and then a drought might have happened, and they're like, okay, no, we are going to save this. We're going to save the environment, or some maybe. Again, I'm just postulating here, but the the fact that they understood that, and now people don't, and now people are so ignorant, right? Like I was watching Space Force. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a really nice line in there where they say, uh, people after World War II made a lot of good decisions that made the world a better place. Uh, don't don't you don't go to war long enough and then you forget those things. It's been a long while after polio. You forget how important vaccines are, and just because you don't remember the advantages, or rather, just because you don't remember the bad things that have happened because of uh, you know us stopping as not using nature properly, doesn't mean you should be ignorant about it. And realistically, especially for people in cities, we probably reap the most benefit from nature. We don't do the farming, but we have all the fruits,
Yeah.
right? And the reason for that is nature somewhere, someone's breaking their back and actually farming. The second, all it requires for a shift in demand and everything will collapse for concrete cities. It really will.
And even look at, like, even today with so much computing and technology and everything, when we are really fixed in a huge problem of engineering or science, we always turn back to nature. Like when our skyscrapers were getting too tall, and it was becoming a huge energy problem of how do you get cool air flowing through the building. And we had a problem, like it's something that we don't think about, like how do they even get air into the building, like uh, eventually one part is going to get filled with hot air, one part is good, the hot air is going to get on the top and the cold air is going to settle at the bottom. So how did they overcome that problem? And for a long time they didn't. So skyscrapers only had a height limit until some scientists went back to nature and they looked at termite mounds. Termite mounds are huge, they're the size of a human being.
Hmm.
So how do they regulate their temperature? They put a hole in the top, they let that hot air escape, so the convection currents bring in more cold air from the bottom.
Hmm.
So even
That's
then we had
amazing.
to go back. We had to go back to our roots, our nature.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? One thing that you can't dispute, right? Like mathematics, right? Like nature works, right? Like it requires a thinking human being with malicious intents, not needs, intents, right? You need to burn down the forest in order to build the factory. You don't need to burn down the forest for sake of survival, right? So
Yeah,
it's not something we're doing because of nature. It's because we have intentions, right? It takes that for it to get destroyed. But nature works otherwise, right? And like there's a whole branch of design called biomimicry, where your intention
yeah. I
is
was
to
reading about exactly that.
your
Yeah,
your your intention is to just look at things. I think even with flights, if I'm not wrong, flights is an excellent example. Anyway, like wings, that's why we fly, right? We sort of glide with the air and create the air pressure, and that's why we're able to lift off. That's why planes are able to lift off like birds. That's a really common example that we can all look up to, right? Uh, eh, like if left to our imagination, we might think anything might fly, but there's so much things that work in nature. Like the way a banyan tree is just so structurally safe because of the way the roots come from its branch and then again intertwine into the ground is amazing.
yeah.
Uh,
It
so
lets the
like
it lets the tree get wider and wider without losing any structural strength.
yeah, and it slowly gets taller, and then it also as a result it I think it lives for a really long time, right? It's one of the trees that's able to endure time, and not a lot of things endure time.
Yeah, our buildings definitely don't. There's still a lot that we need to get from nature to look at how do we make our buildings sustain with time.
True. And time, yeah, like again, and I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? Taking care of nature to make sure this whole humanity civilization that we've built, we sustain it over time. It's a purely survival. Like again, I was watching this beautiful George Carlin bit. Right, he's a stand-up comedian. People who
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
absolute legend. Uh, so he was talking about
The
people
growth
who
of
go
comedy.
on. who keep on like who goes on about we need to save the environment. The end of the day, when you boil it down, it's not like you're saving the planet. The planet isn't going anywhere. You're saving humanity. And
Yeah.
when you really understand what you're doing and you're able to come to terms with that, and I think a lot of people right now think that they're working towards a noble cause. But if you really understand it's about survival, you'll understand survival is intrinsically involved in living symbiotically with nature. Right? If you don't have anything to eat, if you kill all your species, and if it's just your species, you're going to have to become cannibals to live. That's a bad thing for survival.
Like, think about it. Humans are not very okay. So I was watching something, and it spoke about efficiency. I think Hassan Minhaj's video about why America is so struck by uh, America is so struck by Corona. It's basically America is too efficient. Efficiency, as you increase efficiency, you bring down resilience. So the human body is very efficient. It's one of the most efficient animals in the world. But we're also the most fragile animals in the world. We need this particular temperature. We need this particular food. We can't produce certain things. We can't even produce vitamin C. Like, we are very rare that we can't even produce vitamin C. So we need so many things proper, pristine, so for us to live properly. That's why we terraform the place we live in to fit our needs. So if the whole earth switches a bit here, a bit there, we will be the first species to die. The rest of nature will be proper. It'll still come back. It's humanity which will not be able to bounce back.
Yeah. Like, I think in Sapiens, there's an excellent portion where the book talks about, how animals, like in evolution, right? People may develop a fin, animals may develop fins, animal may develop wings. Humans develop the ability to think. And after that, most of their evolution, or rather the change in their society, right? A human society is so drastic without physical evolution happening. It's just ideas after ideas, and again, like you said, changing our environment to fit our needs. And I think we're at a point where it's about time we sort of make that change in sync with the planet, the rest of the planet.
Yeah. But I think we will bounce back. I think once nature becomes like too toxic for us, I think we will start respecting.
Agreed. It's not respecting. Again, I think really humans ultimately are animals, and animals act out of need. When we really start like when really starts to matter.